The 25 Most Amazing Paintings by Wassily Kandinsky. Number 25. Composition 2, 1910. Composition 2, created in 1910, marks an important milestone in the development of abstract art, a revolutionary movement of the 20th century AD. This work by Russian painter Wassily Kandinsky reflects his early exploration of the relationship between form, color, and emotion, abandoning traditional figurative representations. Contextually, early 20th century art was permeated by innovation and social change, influenced by the rise of industrialization, experimental music, and philosophical thought. Kandinsky's connection to the music of composers such as Arnold Schoenberg inspired his search for a pure art, removed from the constraints of realism. The composition of the work is dominated by geometric shapes, curved lines, and an expressive use of color. Blue, yellow, and red hues intertwine organically, creating a sense of dynamism and movement. Kandinsky's technique is characterized by his ability to create a visual symphony, where each element has its own rhythm and harmony. He used deliberate brushstrokes and layers of paint to create a rich, complex texture that invites the viewer to contemplate the painting in an introspective manner. In Kandinsky's career, Composition 2 represents the beginning of his iconic compositions, a series of works that evolved into a completely abstract visual language. The work is also a testament to his interest in spirituality and art, influenced by his reading of theosophical texts and his desire to connect art with the deepest emotions of human beings. This painting not only cemented his position as a pioneer of abstract art, but also inspired future generations of artists, such as Piet Mondrian and Kazimir Malevich. A fascinating fact about this work is that Kandinsky considered it to be visual music, capable of provoking sensations and emotions similar to those of a musical composition. His revolutionary approach transformed the perception of art, proving that lines and colors can convey complex and profound ideas without relying on recognizable representations. Number 24. Improvisation 27, Garden of Love II, 1912. In 1912, Wassily Kandinsky created Improvisation 27, Garden of Love II, a work noted for its emotional intensity and bold exploration of color and form in 20th century AD abstract art. This painting was created at a time when Kandinsky was experimenting with the idea of improvisations, spontaneous works that sought to capture fleeting emotional states and spiritual connections. Influenced by his cultural and philosophical surroundings, this period coincided with the rise of the Expressionist movement, of which Kandinsky was a forerunner. The painting features a dense and vibrant composition, where warm colors such as red and orange dominate the scene, contrasting with cool shades of blue and green. The abstract shapes are arranged in a free, almost chaotic manner, evoking a sense of continuous movement and overflowing energy. Kandinsky achieved this effect through the use of quick, loose brushstrokes, which create a dynamic and visually intriguing texture. The title of the work, Garden of Love II, suggests a utopian space where emotions flourish, moving away from earthly limitations. For Kandinsky, this work was not only a visual experiment, but also a reflection of his deep belief in the transformative power of art. He believed that abstract art could transcend cultural barriers and communicate directly with the soul, an idea influenced by his interest in theosophy and music. Garden of Love II occupies a prominent place in his career, as it represents a step towards greater creative and spiritual freedom. Interestingly, Kandinsky saw this painting as a gateway to an idealized world, where form and color became vehicles of inner transformation. This vision profoundly influenced the development of modern art, leaving an indelible mark on the history of abstract art. Number 23. Composition number 224, blank. 1920. In 1920, Wassily Kandinsky created composition number 224, white, a work that reflects his evolution towards a more geometric and structured abstract language, characteristic of the constructivist period of the 20th century after Christ. In a historical context marked by the post-war period and social and technological changes, Kandinsky began to explore a more analytical and rational approach in his art, influenced by his time as a teacher at the Bauhaus. The work is distinguished by its predominance of white tones, which symbolize purity and infinite potential, in contrast with black, red, and yellow geometric shapes. Kandinsky uses straight lines, circles, and triangles to create a visual balance that suggests order and harmony. The technique employed is meticulous, with a precise use of negative space to emphasize the interaction between elements. In Kandinsky's career, this work represents a significant transition from his lyrical phase to a more systematic aesthetic. Composition number 224, white, is considered a visual manifesto of his theory on spirituality in art, where color and form become tools to explore universal and metaphysical concepts. The work also reflects his interest in science and music, elements that influenced his artistic conception. A fascinating detail about this painting is how Kandinsky described it as a visual silence, where each shape and color has a specific purpose, creating a unique contemplative experience. This innovative approach solidified his legacy as one of the leading theorists and practitioners of abstract art. Number 22. All Saints' Eye, 1911. The painting All Saints' Eye, created in 1911 by Wassily Kandinsky, represents a crucial moment in the artist's transition towards abstract art in the 20th century AD. Contextually, this period was influenced by expressionist currents and the search for a renewed spirituality in art. The work is inspired by religious iconography, reinterpreted through an abstract visual language that challenges traditional conventions. The composition is rich in form and color, with warm hues such as red and yellow symbolizing energy and vitality, while deep blues evoke calm and spiritual transcendence. Curved lines and abstract figures suggest movement and dynamism, creating a thought-provoking visual narrative. Kandinsky employed energetic brushstrokes and layering of paint to add depth and texture to the work, giving it an almost three-dimensional feel. In Kandinsky's career, All Saints' Eye is an early example of his attempt to integrate spiritual concepts into art, influenced by his reading of mystical and religious texts. The painting not only marked a milestone in his artistic development, but also resonated deeply with the expressionist movement, inspiring other artists to explore new forms of expression. An intriguing aspect of this work is how Kandinsky combined his fascination with music and spirituality to create a unique sensory experience. He considered this painting to be a visual symphony, where each element played a role in the overall composition, transforming it into a visual meditation on the divine. Number 21. Improvisation 7, 1910. Created in 1910, Improvisation 7 is an early masterpiece by Wassily Kandinsky that stands out for its energy and spontaneity, characteristics that define the abstract movement of the 20th century after Christ. In a context of artistic and cultural innovation, Kandinsky sought to break free from the limitations of figurative representation, developing a visual language that focused on emotion and spirituality. The painting is composed of abstract shapes and a bold use of color, with bright shades of yellow, red, and blue interacting harmoniously. The rapid, fluid brushstrokes create an effect of constant movement, evoking feelings of freedom and transcendence. Kandinsky described these improvisations as spontaneous manifestations of his inner world, a direct reflection of his deepest emotions and thoughts. In his artistic career, Improvisation 7 represents a fundamental step towards pure abstraction, laying the foundations for his later work and consolidating his position as a pioneer of abstract art. This painting also illustrates his interest in music as a form of expression parallel to visual art, a recurring theme in his theoretical and practical work. A fascinating detail about this work is how Kandinsky considered it an emotional landscape, designed to evoke sensory and spiritual responses in the viewer. This innovative vision transformed modern art, proving that emotions can be communicated through abstract shapes and colors with unparalleled depth. Number 20. Painting with white border. 1913. In 1913, well into the 20th century, Wassily Kandinsky created one of his most iconic works, painting with a white border. This historical period marked a significant transition in modern art, when symbolism and expressionism were at their peak. Kandinsky, known as the pioneer of abstract art, worked with a deep philosophy that related colors and shapes to emotional and spiritual states. This particular work shows how the artist used his color theory to express a visual symphony that evokes harmony and dynamism. Technically, the painting is characterized by the free application of brushstrokes that seem to move independently, but which, together, create an unusual balance. The predominant tones are warm, with accents in cold colors that seem to interact with each other, while the white border that gives the work its title frames the composition as a window into the organized chaos that Kandinsky proposed. The technique of superimposing colors and lines, which seem to float in an infinite space, reflects a conceptual depth that moves away from recognizable forms, giving way to pure abstraction. This work is crucial in Kandinsky's career because it cemented his place as one of the leading figures of abstract art. His constant search to capture the spiritual through abstract forms led to the creation of a unique visual language, which inspired later generations of artists. Painting with a white border is a synthesis of the influences that shaped the artist, from classical music to Russian cultural traditions. Interestingly, Kandinsky described this painting as a structured improvisation, reflecting his fascination with music and his intention to translate it into visual art. This synesthetic connection between sound and color was one of the artist's most revolutionary contributions, further highlighting the importance of this work in the history of modern art. Number 19. The Blue Rider. 1903. In 1903, in the middle of the 20th century, Wassily Kandinsky painted The Blue Rider, a work that became the emblem of the artistic group that he later co-founded. This painting represents a key moment in the development of German Expressionism and marks the beginning of Kandinsky's artistic journey towards abstraction. During this time, art was deeply influenced by rural life, spirituality, and a longing for transcendence in the face of industrial and scientific advances. The work stands out for its apparent simplicity, in which a rider, mounted on horseback, crosses a mountainous landscape. Kandinsky used vibrant and contrasting colors that evoke a strong emotional and spiritual sense. The movement of the rider, combined with the fluidity of the natural environment, suggests a dynamism that transcends the visual to touch on the symbolic. The choice of a landscape as a background also reflects the artist's interest in capturing the connection between humanity and nature. The Blue Rider is significant not only for its visual content, but also because the title became the name of one of the most influential movements in modern art. This group, led by Kandinsky and Franz Marc, sought to break away from traditional forms and explore new forms of expression. The work embodies this philosophy, anticipating the abandonment of concrete forms in favor of the abstract. A fascinating detail about this painting is that Kandinsky saw the horseman as a symbol of the spirit triumphing over the material. This recurring theme in his work underlines his focus on the spiritual as the core of his art, an idea that revolutionized the perception of art in the 20th century. Number 18. Houses in Munich, 1908. In 1908, Wassily Kandinsky painted Houses in Munich, a work that captures the essence of a vibrant and changing city during the 20th century. This period was a pivotal one in the artist's life, as Munich became the epicenter of his creative evolution and the place where he developed his unique artistic language. The work reflects not only the architecture of the city, but also the effervescent atmosphere of cultural and artistic innovation that defined the era. The composition is characterized by intense colors and stylized geometric shapes that suggest houses, but without a strict adherence to realism. Kandinsky used warm colors such as yellows and reds, contrasted with blues and greens, to create a sense of vitality and energy. The lines that outline the structures are loosely drawn, almost as if the artist were exploring the boundaries between representation and abstraction. Houses in Munich is pivotal in Kandinsky's career because it demonstrates his transition from a figurative style to a more abstract one. This work is a testament to his ability to capture the essence of a place without relying on realistic detail, a skill that defined his artistic legacy. It is also a window into the world in which he lived and created, a world full of possibilities and radical change. An interesting fact about this painting is that it reflects the influence of the Impressionist and Post-Impressionist movements, which Kandinsky reinterpreted in his own way, laying the foundations for what would be his most lasting contribution to art: lyrical abstraction. Number 17. Improvisation 19. 1911. In 1911, Wassily Kandinsky created Improvisation 19 inches, a work that represents the culmination of his experiments with abstraction in the 20th century. This period marked a turning point in his career, as it was when he began to completely move away from recognizable forms to focus on the pure expression of emotions through color and shape. The work is part of his series of improvisations, in which the artist sought to capture the spontaneous flow of his emotions. The painting is distinguished by its free structure and vibrant colors, which seem to emerge and dissolve on the canvas like musical notes in a composition. Kandinsky used dynamic lines and abstract shapes to create a sense of movement and energy. Warm and cool colors interact harmoniously, evoking a sensory experience that goes beyond the visual. Improvisation 19 inches is crucial to Kandinsky's evolution because it reflects his interest in synesthesia, the idea that senses can be intertwined. For him, every color had an associated sound, and this work is a manifestation of that philosophy. His approach revolutionized 20th century art, inspiring abstract and expressionist artists around the world. A curious fact about this work is that Kandinsky used to compare it to a musical symphony, where each visual element plays a role in creating a unique emotional experience. Number 16. The Blue Mountain, from 1908 to 1909. Between 1908 and 1909, Wassily Kandinsky painted The Blue Mountain, a work that reflects his transition to expressionism and his fascination with spirituality. In the 20th century, Kandinsky was deeply influenced by the ideas of emotional abstraction and the connection between nature and the human soul. This painting shows a mountainous landscape with stylized figures and vivid colors, evoking a feeling of transcendence. The use of saturated colors, such as the deep blue of the mountain and the warm tones of the human figures, creates a contrast that emphasizes the monumentality of the landscape. Kandinsky used loose brushstrokes and simplified forms to capture the essence of the place, rather than its specific details. This allowed him to convey deeper, more universal emotions. The Blue Mountain is significant in the artist's career because it marks the beginning of his exploration of the abstract. This work combines figurative and abstract elements, an approach that Kandinsky would refine in the following years. It also symbolizes his interest in blue as a color that represents the spiritual and the infinite. An interesting detail is that Kandinsky saw the mountain as a symbol of personal and spiritual improvement, a recurring theme in his work that defined him as one of the most innovative artists of his time. Number 15. Sky Blue, 1940. Created in 1940, Blue Sky is one of the most iconic works by Wassily Kandinsky, a painter renowned for his contribution to abstract art in the 20th century AD. This canvas reflects a mature stage of his career, in which organic shapes and soft colors converge in a composition that evokes an ethereal and contemplative world. In this work, Kandinsky abandons the rigid and geometric structures that characterized his earlier work to immerse himself in a more fluid and emotional universe, marked by the connection between the spiritual and the visual. The work features a predominance of the color blue, associated with the infinite and the transcendental according to the artist's chromatic theories. The figures float in an almost surrealist manner on the canvas, suggesting a celestial space that escapes the restrictions of physical reality. The soft contours and light strokes generate a sense of movement and harmony, as if the viewer were observing a parallel universe. The strategic use of warm tones in contrast to the cold background adds depth and dynamism to the piece, demonstrating Kandinsky's technical mastery. Blue Sky stands out not only for its intrinsic beauty, but also for its relevance within the development of abstract art. At this stage, Kandinsky sought to represent intangible concepts such as emotions, music, and spirituality through a completely innovative visual language. The work reflects his interest in synesthesia, where colors and shapes seek to evoke sounds and feelings in the viewer, connecting deeply with the human soul. A curious fact about this piece is how Kandinsky described blue as the deepest color, the one that takes us to eternity. In this sense, sky blue is perceived not only as a painting, but as an immersive experience that invites introspection and connection with the sublime. Number 14. Composition V, 1911. Created in 1911, Composition V marks a pivotal moment in the career of Wassily Kandinsky, considered one of the pioneers of abstract art in the 20th century AD. This monumental work combines elements of chaos and order in a complex composition that redefines the boundaries of the visual. Inspired by music and spirituality, Kandinsky creates a canvas that vibrates with energy and movement, a visual representation of strength and transformation. The technique used in Composition V is especially notable for its intensity and freedom. The artist employs vibrant colors and bold brushstrokes that intertwine to form an abstract landscape. Shapes seem to emerge and fade in a continuous flow, challenging the viewer's perception. Kandinsky breaks with the artistic conventions of his time, creating a work that does not depict concrete objects, but rather universal emotions and moods. The historical context of this work is equally relevant. In 1911, Kandinsky co-founded the Blue Rider, a movement that sought to explore new forms of artistic expression beyond the figurative. Composition V thus becomes a visual manifesto of his ideals, showing how art can transcend the material to touch the spiritual. The work captures the essence of an era in which art was in full revolution, seeking new ways to connect with the viewer. An interesting anecdote about this painting is how Kandinsky related it to music, especially to the idea of a visual concert. He said that each color was like a musical note and that together they created a symphony that resonated in the soul of the beholder. Number 13. 3 Concerto Print. 1911. Impression 3 Concerto, created in 1911, is one of Wassily Kandinsky's most recognized works of the 20th century AD. Inspired by a classical music concert he attended, this painting encapsulates the energy and emotion of a sonic experience transformed into an image. The work is a perfect example of how Kandinsky fused his love of music with his passion for painting, creating a piece that seems to vibrate with every stroke and color. In this canvas, yellow and black tones predominate, colors that Kandinsky believed represented the intensity and emotional depth of music. The abstract forms suggest a concert hall filled with movement and sound, where the audience's emotions intertwine with the notes that fill the air. The composition, although seemingly chaotic, is carefully designed to guide the viewer's eye through a dynamic visual narrative. The impact of this work on Kandinsky's career is significant. Impression 3 Concerto shows his transition to a completely abstract style, where figurative elements are reduced to a minimum. This innovative approach allowed him to explore new ways of depicting human experience, connecting visual art with other forms of expression such as music and literature. An interesting fact about this painting is that Kandinsky believed that art could provoke a synesthetic response, where colors and shapes generated auditory sensations. Thus, Impression 3 Concerto is not only seen, but also felt as if it were accompanied by an invisible symphony. Number 12. Composition V. 1913. Composition V, created in 1913, is one of Wassily Kandinsky's most complex and ambitious works of the 20th century AD. This monumental painting reflects his interest in capturing the immaterial through a completely abstract visual language. With a vibrant color palette and dense composition, Kandinsky manages to convey a sense of controlled chaos that invites the viewer to immerse themselves in a world of intense emotions. The creative process behind Composition V is notable for its level of detail and planning. Kandinsky made numerous sketches and studies before completing the final work, demonstrating his dedication to perfecting each element of the composition. The shapes appear to flow and crash like waves in an ocean, evoking the strength and unpredictability of nature. Blue, red, and yellow hues predominate, creating a visual contrast that amplifies the intensity of the painting. The relevance of this work in Kandinsky's career lies in its ability to synthesize his theories on art and spirituality. Composition V represents his vision of painting as a means of expressing the sublime, that which cannot be described in words. This work becomes a testament to his belief in the transformative power of art. A fascinating aspect of this painting is how Kandinsky described it as a symphony in colors and shapes. For him, every visual element had an emotional equivalent, making Composition V a deeply personal and intimate experience for each viewer. Number 11. Color study squares with concentric circles. 1913. Color study squares with concentric circles, made in 1913, is one of Wassily Kandinsky's most iconic and accessible works of the 20th century AD. Although originally conceived as an exercise in exploring the interactions between colors, this painting has transcended its initial purpose to become a symbol of modern art. The apparent simplicity of the composition belies the depth of its meaning, showcasing Kandinsky's genius for transforming the everyday into something extraordinary. The work consists of a series of squares divided into sections, each with a concentric circle inside. Each color combination seems to vibrate with its own energy, creating a thought-provoking visual mosaic. This experimental approach allowed Kandinsky to explore how colors interact with each other and how they affect the viewer's emotions. The work has often been used in studies on color psychology due to its visual and emotional impact. In the context of Kandinsky's career, this work reflects his interest in the scientific and spiritual properties of color. Although not one of his most complex compositions, Color Study Squares with Concentric Circles demonstrates his ability to communicate profound ideas through simple forms. This work has also influenced generations of artists, highlighting the importance of color as a central element in abstract art. An interesting detail about this work is how each color combination seems to tell a different story, demonstrating Kandinsky's ability to create a visual narrative that resonates with each viewer in a unique way. Number 10. Various Circles. 1926. In the year 1926 AD, one of the most fascinating works of the abstract movement emerged, Various Circles, created by the iconic Wassily Kandinsky. This painting is a masterful representation of his artistic exploration in geometry and color, fundamental elements of his style. Painted in oil on canvas, this work stands out for its ability to convey deep emotions through a seemingly chaotic organization of circles in different sizes and shades. These circles are not simple geometric shapes. They are dynamic entities that seem to float on a dark background, as if suspended in infinite space. The historical context in which Various Circles is set is significant. In the mid-1920s, modern art was in full swing, with movements such as Surrealism, Cubism, and Constructivism marking a transition from the figurative to the abstract. Kandinsky, deeply influenced by his studies of spirituality and synesthesia, understood art as a means to reach elevated emotional states. This work is a reflection of his search to capture the intangible, exploring how colors and geometric shapes can resonate with the human soul. Technically speaking, Kandinsky uses a vibrant color palette in this work that contrasts with the black background to intensify the viewer's perception. Each circle has a unique hue, from bright reds and yellows to deep blues and calming greens, creating a visual harmony that evokes both energy and serenity. In addition, the play of transparencies and superimpositions adds depth, transforming the canvas into a three-dimensional space where shapes seem to interact with each other. The precision of the edges and the strategic arrangement of the circles demonstrate his mastery of compositional balance. This work marked a high point in Kandinsky's career, consolidating him as one of the greatest exponents of abstract art. In several circles, his ability to unite the rational with the spiritual and the scientific with the emotional is at its best. A fascinating detail is how Kandinsky conceived circles not only as geometric shapes, but as symbols of unity and perfection, endowing them with an almost mystical meaning. This work, loaded with symbolism and impeccable technique, remains an essential reference in the history of modern art. Number 9. Improvisation 31 Battle at Sea. 1913. Created in 1913 AD, Improvisation 31 Battle at Sea ranks as one of Wassily Kandinsky's most dynamic and emotive works. This painting is a testament to how abstract art can capture the essence of an experience without relying on traditional figurative representations. Conceived in the context of the political and social instability of the early 20th century, the work suggests a visual metaphor of struggle, chaos, and transformation, using shapes and colors in an almost musical flow. In this piece, Kandinsky displays his skill at integrating movement and color. The title suggests a maritime scene, but the depiction goes beyond the literal, encapsulating the energy of a battle through fluid shapes and intense colors. Red, yellow, and blue hues blend on an oil canvas, creating a contrast that suggests both conflict and vitality. The curved lines and energetic strokes mimic the movement of waves and opposing forces, giving the viewer an immersive visual experience. Historically, this work belongs to Kandinsky's period of artistic maturity, when his theory of inner necessity was fully developed. According to the artist, lines and colors should correspond to inner emotions, turning the canvas into a space where the viewer's emotions are reflected and intensified. Improvisation 31 also marks a moment when Kandinsky began to experiment with the idea of improvisation in his art, transferring the most immediate and least rational emotions onto the canvas. The impact of this work lies in its ability to provoke multiple interpretations. Although its title evokes a battle, Kandinsky offers no definitive answers, leaving it up to the viewer to decipher its meaning. This personal and open connection with the work makes Improvisation 31 Battle at Sea a perfect example of how abstract art transcends the barriers of time and continues to resonate deeply in the contemporary world. Number 8. Circles Within a Circle, 1923. The year 1923 AD marked the creation of an emblematic work within abstract art, Circles Within a Circle, by Wassily Kandinsky. In this piece, the artist introduces a geometric composition that combines mathematical rigor with artistic expressiveness. The work, painted in oil on canvas, is distinguished by its centralized structure, where a large circle contains within it a series of smaller circles, creating a game of proportions and visual relationships that challenge the viewer's perception. The 1920s were a crucial period for Kandinsky, coinciding with his time at the Bauhaus, the influential art and design school. In this environment, the artist deepened his study of geometric forms as a universal language of art. Circles Within a Circle reflects this period, standing out for its precision and simplicity. Kandinsky uses black lines to outline the figures and vibrant colors to fill them, achieving a harmonious balance between the structural and the emotional. The work is not only an example of Kandinsky's technical mastery, but also of his interest in the symbolism of forms. For the artist, the circle represented perfection and wholeness, while colors expressed different emotions. In this painting, smaller circles seem to interact with each other within the larger circle, symbolizing a microcosm in constant motion. This concept of unity within diversity aligns with Kandinsky's theories on art as a spiritual expression. With Circles Within a Circle, Kandinsky cemented his place as a pioneer of abstract art, demonstrating how simple shapes can evoke complex ideas. Interestingly, this work has been interpreted as a representation of the cosmos, with each circle representing a celestial body in perfect harmony. This universalist approach makes Circles Within a Circle a timeless and deeply evocative piece. Number 7. Composition X, 1939. In the year 1939 AD, Wassily Kandinsky created Composition X, a work that encapsulates the culmination of his career and his evolution as an abstract artist. This painting, done in oil on canvas, presents a surreal and dreamlike landscape, dominated by biomorphic forms floating in a dark background. Kandinsky uses intense colors and sinuous lines to build a visual universe that combines chaos and order, showing his mastery in the use of abstraction. The historical context of Composition X is significant, as it was created in a period marked by political and social tensions prior to the Second World War. In this sense, The work can be interpreted as an emotional response to a world in crisis, where organic forms and vibrant colors suggest both hope and uncertainty. This contrast between light and dark reflects the complexity of human feelings in the face of radical change. Technically, Kandinsky employs a compositional approach that appears disorganized, but is actually carefully planned. The biomorphic forms are reminiscent of living organisms, while the black background lends a sense of infinity. The colors, ranging from bright yellows to dark violets, seem to emerge from the canvas, creating an immersive experience for the viewer. Every stroke and color is charged with symbolism, evidencing Kandinsky's connection to spirituality. This work is particularly important because it represents the closing of the series of compositions, which Kandinsky developed throughout his life. In Composition X, the artist not only synthesizes his artistic career, but also invites the viewer to reflect on the role of art in times of uncertainty. A fascinating fact is how this painting has been interpreted as a visual map of the human mind, where shapes and colors represent thoughts, emotions, and dreams, making it a deeply introspective work. Number 6. On White 2. 1923. The year 1923 AD witnessed the creation of one of Wassily Kandinsky's most symbolic and technical works, On White 2. In this canvas, the artist explores the contrast between light and dark, using white as a symbol of purity and black as a representation of emptiness. This work, done in oil on canvas, is an example of Kandinsky's transition towards a more geometric and intellectual style, influenced by his work at the Bauhaus. The cultural context of On White 2 is tied to the rise of modernism and artistic experimentation. Kandinsky, deeply interested in the spirituality of art, saw white as a great silence filled with possibilities, while black represented the end of all things. In this painting, he uses straight and curved lines, along with geometric shapes such as circles, triangles, and rectangles, to create a dynamic balance that seems to flow within the space of the canvas. Technically, the work stands out for its meticulous composition. The elements seem randomly scattered, but each has a clear purpose, contributing to the overall harmony of the painting. Kandinsky uses secondary colors such as violet, green, and orange to complement the predominant white, creating a visual interplay that invites the viewer to discover new relationships between the forms. The overlapping and transparency of some elements add depth and complexity to the composition. This work has a special place in Kandinsky's career because it represents his consolidation as a master of geometric abstraction. On White 2 not only reflects his technical skill, but also his ability to convey philosophical and emotional ideas through art. An intriguing detail is how Kandinsky believed that colors and shapes could vibrate in the soul of the viewer, making each interaction with the work unique and personal. Number 5. Composition 7. 1913. Created in 1913, Composition 7 is one of the most emblematic works of the Russian artist Wassily Kandinsky and a turning point in the development of abstract art. The painting belongs to the 20th century, after Christ, an era marked by the search for new forms of expression that broke with traditional canons. In this period, Europe was experiencing a time of profound cultural and artistic transformation, with movements such as Expressionism and Cubism emerging as responses to modernity. Kandinsky, inspired by music and symbolism, sought to capture in his canvases a visual harmony that evoked emotions similar to those of a musical symphony. Technically, this work is an explosion of abstract shapes and vivid colors that seem to dance in a chaotic but carefully balanced composition. Kandinsky uses oil on canvas with a mastery that demonstrates his deep knowledge of color and pictorial theory. The superposition of curved lines, color spots, and geometric structures creates a feeling of constant movement. The dominant tones, such as deep blue, bright yellows, and intense reds, contrast harmoniously, allowing the viewer to lose themselves in a unique sensory experience. In Kandinsky's career, Composition 7 represents one of his most important achievements. The work encapsulates his ideas about spirituality in art, a concept he developed at length in his book, On the Spiritual in Art, published in 1911. For Kandinsky, art should transcend the material and connect with the soul, and this painting is compelling evidence of that vision. Its monumental character and technical complexity have made it an icon of early abstraction, influencing generations of later artists. A curious detail of Composition 7 is the apparent randomness of its shapes, which are actually meticulously planned. Kandinsky made numerous preparatory sketches before tackling the final canvas, demonstrating that behind the visual chaos there was a profound order. This work, more than a painting, is an experience that invites us to explore the limits of human perception and emotion. Number 4. Composition IV, 1911. Created in 1911, Composition IV belongs to the 20th century, after Christ, and is another of Wassily Kandinsky's fundamental works on his path towards abstraction. This period was marked by the rise of the artistic avant-garde in Europe, where ideas about art and creativity were being challenged and redefined. Kandinsky, influenced by his interest in music and his belief in the spiritual power of color, positioned himself as one of the pioneers of non-figurative art. The work stands out for its simplified forms and vibrant color palette. Despite its abstract appearance, Composition IV contains barely suggested figurative elements, such as hills, human figures, and architectural structures. These forms blur within a visual scheme where colors, such as blue, yellow, and green, take center stage. Kandinsky uses oil on canvas to experiment with the interactions between curved and straight lines, creating a visual dynamism that captivates the viewer. In the context of Kandinsky's career, this work is crucial, as it shows his transition from figurative art to a purer abstraction. As in his other compositions, the influence of music is evident. Kandinsky saw his paintings as symphonic compositions that could evoke emotions and moods without resorting to literal representation. Composition IV is an early example of this vision, which would later become the basis of his artistic legacy. An interesting fact about Composition IV is that Kandinsky created this work at a time of intense collaboration with the group Der Blaue Reiter, a collective of artists who shared his interest in symbolism and spirituality in art. This exchange of ideas enriched his artistic practice and helped to consolidate his place as a leader of the abstract movement. Number 3. Improvisation 28 second version, 1912. In 1912, Improvisation 28 second version marked a turning point in the work of Wassily Kandinsky, who continued to explore the possibilities of abstract art. In the context of the 20th century AD, this work reflects Kandinsky's growing fascination with music as a direct inspiration for his painting. The term improvisation, used in the title, underlines this connection, as it refers to the spontaneity and freedom characteristic of musical creation. The painting features an explosion of abstract shapes and intense colors that seem to emerge directly from the subconscious. Kandinsky uses oil on canvas with a technique that mixes free strokes and carefully structured compositions. In Improvisation 28, warm tones, such as red and orange, contrast with cool ones, such as blue and green, creating a visual balance that suggests movement and emotion. Although the work is abstract, symbolic elements such as crosses and waves can be distinguished, which could allude to spiritual and natural themes. For Kandinsky, this work is a bold statement of his commitment to art as a means of expressing the ineffable. Improvisation 28 inches does not seek to represent reality, but rather to translate emotions and moods into a universal visual language. This idea, which would later be developed into his theory of inner necessity, established Kandinsky as an innovator in the art world. Remarkably, this work was first exhibited at an exhibition of the Der Blau Writer Group, where it generated both admiration and controversy. Its experimental nature and rejection of traditional forms of representation challenged public expectations, cementing Kandinsky's reputation as a revolutionary of modern art. Number 2. Composition 8, 1923. Created in 1923, Composition 8 is a sublime example of the geometric language developed by Wassily Kandinsky during his time at the Bauhaus in the 20th century AD. This work reflects a more rational and structured approach to his painting, in contrast to the fluidity and spontaneity of his early compositions. In this period, Kandinsky was deeply influenced by the rise of modernist ideas and the search for functionality in art and design. The painting is a compendium of geometric shapes carefully arranged on a neutral background. Circles, triangles, straight lines and curves interact in a dynamic balance that evokes a visual symphony. Kandinsky employs a precise color palette where primary tones, such as blue, red, and yellow, are combined with blacks and grays to create harmonious contrasts. The oil-on-canvas technique is impeccable, highlighting his ability to transform abstract concepts into striking visual compositions. In Kandinsky's career, Composition 8 marks a moment of artistic maturity, where his interest in spirituality merges with a more scientific aesthetic. His work at the Bauhaus allowed him to refine his approach, experimenting with the relationship between form and color in a pedagogical context. This work is a testament to his ability to adapt his style to new trends without losing his artistic essence. An interesting aspect of Composition 8 is the influence of music on its structure. Kandinsky viewed this work as a visual score, where each shape and color had a specific tone that contributed to the overall harmony. This unique conception of art is still studied and admired today. Number 1. Yellow, Red, Blue, 1925. Created in 1925, Yellow, Red, Blue is one of Wassily Kandinsky's most recognizable works and a milestone in the development of abstract art in the 20th century AD. Painted during his time at the Bauhaus, this work encapsulates the synthesis of his interest in color, form, and spirituality in art. During this period, Kandinsky was surrounded by intellectuals and artists who shared his vision of a functional and deeply meaningful art. The painting is a vibrant spectacle where yellow, red, and blue act as protagonists, surrounded by a variety of geometric shapes and dynamic lines. Each color seems to have an emotional and symbolic meaning, with yellow radiating energy, red transmitting strength, and blue evoking calm. Kandinsky uses oil on canvas with a technical precision that highlights the interplay between colors and shapes, creating a visually balanced composition. In the context of Kandinsky's career, Yellow, Red, Blue is a work that cements his legacy as one of the pioneers of abstract art. This painting reflects his theory of inner necessity, where every element on the canvas has a purpose and meaning beyond the visible. Its influence on modern art is undeniable, inspiring generations of artists to explore the power of color and abstraction. A fascinating detail is the way Kandinsky manages to combine complexity and simplicity in this work. Despite the richness of elements on the canvas, each shape and color feels intentional, contributing to a unique visual experience. This balance between the emotional and the rational is what makes Yellow, Red, Blue a timeless work in art history. Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.